Welcome back, everybody. If you're new, my name's Nicholas, and this is Investing Against the Grain. As we've talked about in the last few videos, we have been anticipating this CPI report that came out this morning at 8:30 a.m. Now, CPI, if you aren't familiar, is the Consumer Pricing Index, and essentially it's how the federal government, the Fed in general, the Federal Reserve, and everybody, that's how they determine where we are as a nation, the United States of America, when it comes to inflation. And so what was anticipated was a bump up of about 0.2 to 0.3%, so 7.2 to 7.3% in aggregate year over year. Well, check this out. Instead of getting that 7.2 or 7.3, we saw inflation surges to 7.5% on an annual basis, even more than expected and highest since 1982. This is ridiculous. Okay, it is going up faster and faster. We thought that perhaps it was starting to taper off or at least it's starting to increase at a slower rate. But no, this actually just accelerated. Okay, we thought we were going to go from 7 to 7.2 to 7.3. Instead, we went from 7 to 7.5%. Okay, this is pretty drastic. Now, as you could imagine, what was the reaction of it? Well, if we take a look here, the Dow dropped 500 points on fears that the Fed will be more aggressive to contain surging inflation. And actually, the Dow Jones just closed and it actually fell by 600 points. So what does this mean? Why is it falling? What's going on? Well, the big fear is that now, with inflation continuing to increase at an even faster clip, that the Fed, Jerome Powell and his cohort, will have even more incentive and even more of a mandate and more of a guarantee to be able to raise rates, not by the 25 basis points that we had been predicting and led to believe that that's what would happen in March, but instead by 50 basis point or 0.5%. Okay, so this is what the market was freaking out about today. Now, what was interesting was right after all this information came out, initially you saw that all three indexes, the NASDAQ, S&P, Dow, they all kind of took a dump. But then they all recovered. Okay, they all recovered, went into the green. Even Tesla, right? Tesla dumped, went into the green. Right? Tesla was up, I think, $12 or $13 at one point. And then towards the end of the day, when it was clear by another Fed official coming out saying that, it looks more likely that's probably going to be 0.5%, we took another dive. And so Tesla ended up closing at about $904 a share, somewhere around there. I didn't see the final numbers. But, what does this mean, big scheme of things? Well, really, as a Tesla investor, as a long-term investor, it means nothing. It really doesn't, okay? If we're talking about looking 5 to 10 years down the road, it's irrelevant. The only reason this is relevant is so that you can be up to date with what's going on in the markets with your stock. But other than that, it's irrelevant. Maybe it matters for you as far as your day-to-day life, right? What's going on with inflation. We're all seeing it. We're all seeing it at the grocery stores. We're all seeing it at restaurants. We're all seeing it at everyday goods from toilet paper to Windex, right? We're all seeing price hikes. And so now there's going to be this risk of an overcorrection. And so what tends to happen is this is where Jerome Powell and his team will go ahead and start raising rates to try and slow down all this spending and demand that we're seeing within the economy. And so the problem with that is that as they raise rates, there's a high likelihood that they overcorrect. Okay, they overshoot. And what does that do? Well, if you are trying to suppress the economy essentially and trying to slow it down so that supply can catch up to all the demand, well, inevitably, if you overshoot that could send the economy into a recession. And so that's what everybody's fearful of. And it's not this mythical, paranoia, conspiracy theory type fear. No, it's a very legitimate fear because it's happened over and over and over again. I think there's a quote out there or a saying that says the Fed creates recessions. So now, are we going to go into a recession? I don't know. No one knows. I know you're going to see all these doom and gloom people out there talking about it. All these people who are going to try to time things and predict things. Look, they're just YouTubers. They're just analysts. They're just people on CNBC or Bloomberg or Yahoo. Look, they don't know anything any more than you do. Okay, they may know a few more acronyms. They may have more up-to-date information. They may know a little more history than you do. But the truth is, nobody can predict this. If anyone could actually predict this, then we would see people completely out of the stock market or people just buying like crazy in the stock market. But if you even look at the stock market now, There's been no volume. It has been so stagnant. Nobody knows what to do. Nobody knows what's going to happen next. Nobody knows what the Fed's going to do. And then, of course, we're just talking about our little microcosm of the United States. We haven't even looked to see, what about China? What about Europe? What are they doing? China just cut rates. What does that do to the bigger picture of things, right? That stimulates their economy. So what does that happen to us? What are the ripple effects of that? So it's important to know these things. And I think the inflation story is more important for your day-to-day life, just to understand what's happening, why prices are going up, why everything's getting more expensive. But from an investing perspective, if anything, keep dollar cost averaging, okay? Keep buying every month as you normally do. Just my opinion, not advice, not investment advice, but this is what I would recommend. So, I want to spend a little time on this because I've talked about this literally all week, even parts of last week, because I thought this was a very important metric to keep an eye on. And sure enough, it was. It did move markets. And again, I'll never sit here and try to predict what's going to happen, but this was a big number, and this is definitely something that we're going to have to keep an eye on moving forward, because the next one will come out in March, which we'll be reading for February, and then the Fed actually meets to make a decision around mid-March. So keep an eye out for that. Those are going to be some very important times to look at as far as the calendar goes, and especially with what we're going to talk about now. So let's get into more Tesla stuff. So here we can read this article that came out yesterday saying Tesla production in Berlin to start mid-March at earliest. And so if you read the gist of this article, essentially they're saying that due to Tesla having to go through a permitting or a change order, essentially. So imagine you're building a house, okay? And imagine in your house you have everything designed exactly how you want it. But then all of a sudden you decide, you know what? I no longer want those granite countertops. Instead, I want marble countertops. I want marble throughout. Well, that would be a change order, right? You're changing from the initial design of the house. And so what happens with that is normally you get charged a little more and things have to be changed a little bit, but it's no big deal, right? The process keeps going forward. It doesn't inhibit you getting your certificate of occupancy because it's just changing out the countertops. Well, something similar is happening with Giga Berlin because Tesla has made a couple changes, right? They've decided to add in the battery plant. They've also decided to change the amount of toxins that might be spill maximum based on certain safety procedures. I don't know all the ins and outs of it. Some of these articles talk a little bit about it, but there's not a lot of detail or nuance into them. But the point is, there's a new change. Tesla's having to go through all of these applications, all these procedures all over again. It's essentially, if you make any change, you have to go back to the starting point and go through all of the procedures again. And so that's essentially what's happening here. Now, there are other rumors and reports out that now Tesla's at the point where they are actually starting the permit approval process. In other words, the think of it as your certificate of occupancy, right? The ability to move in. They're essentially going through that process now, and so that takes a long time. But so now it seems like everything's been pushed to mid-March. Now, this isn't going without some other noise happening. So take a look at this. This morning, this came out saying Tesla received support to accelerate Giga Berlin construction approval from German Traffic Light Coalition. Now, I'm assuming you don't know what the German Light Traffic Coalition is, or Traffic Light Coalition is, because I didn't either. So take a look at this. In German politics, the Traffic Light Coalition is a coalition government of the Social Democratic Party of Germany, the Free Democratic Party, and Alliance 90, the Greens. And then, so it talks a little more about here, but essentially this is a coalition of political parties that are grouping together to help pressure and expedite the passing of Giga Berlin and the process going on there. What's really happening is that a lot of people in Germany are kind of fed up with all of the red tape and bureaucracy that's going on for anything to get done in the country, right? It's not a good look for Germany on the national stage. It's not a good look for Germany on the international stage. And just in general, for anyone wanting to come and do business there and they see what Tesla's going through, well, that's going to be a headwind for them, right? Why would anyone want to go to Berlin or to Germany in general and do any work there, bring any manufacturing there when they see all the struggles Tesla's going with? And everybody knows, if anything, Tesla is going to be the most efficient with any of this. So if Tesla's having these type of struggles, what's anyone else going to have to go through? right? And that's what's going through their mind. So a lot of these political parties within Germany are saying, hey, we need to ratify this. We need to change this. It can't be that this is the process, especially with a company like Tesla. I think people see Tesla as the poster child of how to get things done quickly, efficiently, in the right way. And so this is just a big light being flashed onto the inefficiencies of the way the German bureaucracy works here. So although this is kind of some sucky news with Berlin, and I think we've all kind of been expecting this because we haven't been hearing much, and Elon's travels to Germany got delayed from mid-January to now mid-February, and who knows, it's probably getting delayed again to mid-March. I find it very hard to believe that Elon's even going to fly out there unless it's to say, yep, we got the certificate of occupancy, the permits of approval to go ahead and start production for the Model Ys. So we'll have to keep an eye out on that. The good thing is there's obviously some people on behalf of Tesla trying to make some noise of this. There's a lot of supporters there. The community wants it. There's a lot of jobs that are going to be created from this for local people, for young people, and it'll keep them there rather than people growing up in the territory or the city of Grünheide and getting essentially pushed out to go to other areas of Berlin just to work. So there's a lot of impetus and drive and want for this project. That's Giga Berlin. Kind of upsetting news, but I figured we could end today's episode on a more uplifting note. And so I listened to this interview yesterday with Franz von Holzen. I'm not good at saying that, but I think you guys know who I'm talking about. He's essentially the designer at Tesla. And so he was on Spike's Car Radio. You can see it here. I'm going to leave a link for it down below. I think it's a very good interview, gives you some insights. We don't hear a lot from Franz, but he is, essentially the designer, the eye of Tesla, the aesthetics of it. And so I thought, this would be a good interview for everybody to listen to. And so I did take some very interesting notes away from it. And the first thing the way that it starts, essentially, the whole interview was Franz being asked, do you have meetings or strategy sessions for these good ideas? So in other words, he's talking about things like going keyless, right? Having your phone be your key, or the way the car door handle presents itself to you, or the fact that all of a sudden now we see the blind spot camera come up anytime you go to switch lanes, right? Just all these little ideas that you constantly see with Tesla. They keep iterating, right? The fact that, from day one that you get the vehicle, that is not the best the car will be, but the car will continue to get better and better over the life that you own it. Right. And so the question was, do you guys have these planning sessions, these think tanks or anything like that? And Franz was saying, no, pretty much anything that just seems obvious to do, we do it. Right. We don't sit there and plan these things out. We just think about more so oh, that's really annoying to have to do X, Y, Z. Okay, well, how can we fix that? How can we make that better? He also kept talking about how the idea of any good idea is an idea we'll use. And so, for example, the whole light show that's been going on right now, right? We saw all through the holidays where all these Teslas are lined up and they have all these light shows where lights, blinkers and headlights and tail lights, and right, they all come on at different times. The Model X, the doors start to flap, all this stuff. It was actually the idea of it, I guess, or the design of it was done by an intern. And, a few people got on the project and they worked on it after work, during the weekend and after hours. And they're the ones that came up with it, but it was a good idea. And what was asked was, how does the intern get this idea boiled up to Franz? And Franz is like, well, it doesn't matter who came up with the idea. It's a good idea. And, pretty much it can come up through anyone, right? There's many ways for things to boil up. But it's just interesting to hear the perspective from Franz on how their culture is. It also reiterates what Elon Musk and the whole team were laughing about during the conference call when they asked, do you guys have a think tank for next products or things within the company? And they all laughed, said, no, we just, we work on stuff and ideas come up and we run with those ideas if they're good ideas. It is that simple. So I thought that was pretty awesome. What was also awesome was the interviewer, listening to him, I guess Spike is his name maybe, but listening to him talk about, well, Franz asked him, what's your favorite new feature that you've seen over a software update? And he said, well, the light show, absolutely. And apparently he didn't even know about it. The way he found out about it was his daughters, they saw it on TikTok, and they ran outside to the Tesla, and they were like, Dad, look. And they went and started playing with it, and they made their own little light show. And that's how he found out about it. And just think about that. His kids, via TikTok, found out about this new update for their Tesla, and they ran out and got so excited about it. Right? This is the difference between Tesla and everybody else, right? This is the delta that a lot of people just don't seem to see. It's that love, the emotion that we get within the vehicle, that, you know, every other vehicle is just kind of cold, and it's just a steel metal object that sits in your garage. But a Tesla has become something that even a 3-year-old can see and recognize. And you know, it's a fun device. It's like you have your phone, you have your iPad. Oh, let's go play in the Tesla, right? It's just become this extension of fun for kids and something that they're excited about. You just don't see that with any other car manufacturer. They also talked a lot about design philosophy. And, you know, Franz talked a lot about the Model S. And it's funny because I talk a lot on here how every morning I grab my cup of coffee with my fiance, and we sit down, we watch CNBC. And Joe Kernan, if you watch CNBC, Squawk Box, Joe always talks about how, yeah, the Model S is nice and all that. And, you know, I want a new design. I want a new design. But it's very interesting to hear Franz talk about how the Model S has actually become a timeless design. And I thought that really resonated with me, especially because of my fiance. So my fiance, she designs hotels and museums and just these elaborate, beautiful spaces. And really, you know, something she talks about a lot is that any real good design stands the test of time. It's timeless. It's not something you have to constantly update, right? Like a good example, it's kind of like things like marble, right? Marble, I mean, man, ever since, you know, the Greeks and the Romans, like marble is still something that's so beautiful and so natural, right? And so having timeless design, something that, you know, 10 years, 20 years still looks good. Sure, some things need to get updated. You know, maybe you want something to be a little different here and there, but the overall design is timeless. And I thought when Franz talked about that, it was very interesting to hear someone who's designing vehicles have the same ethos and philosophy as my fiance does when she's talking about designing spaces that people go in there to feel a certain way, right? Whether it's a museum or a hotel, right? Like these are, you know, you're not just going there saying, oh, this is a nice place, but they're places that make you want to feel a certain way. Whether it's in a museum, you want to feel pensive and thoughtful about what you're looking at. And it's not so much just what you're looking at, but how much negative space you have to give, you know, give more appreciation towards that individual piece. Or if it's a hotel that is making you want to hang out in the lobby and grab a drink and spend more time there, you know, kind of in a communal fashion, right? So a vehicle has that same kind of effect. And, you know, it's just fascinating to me just to see, especially as an engineer, to see like just all the different elements that come into design, right? A lot of times I think we think of design, we take it for granted, but there's just so much that goes into it. There's so much intricacy that goes into it that you don't even think about, but it's having an effect on you on an emotional basis. And anyways, I found it extremely fascinating. He also talked about the Cybertruck, and as you all know, I am still waiting on my Cybertruck, as all of you are. This is something that I just can't wait for, but I'm willing to wait for it because I know it's going to be badass. But he talked about how, again, they thought about the makeup of a Cybertruck and what is a Cybertruck. And I've talked about this a lot. You know, in the military, you know, we have tanks, and the whole idea of tanks is to keep all the delicate stuff, aka us humans, us with our skin bags, inside of this, you know, turtle-like shell, right? This rough exterior that you can shoot at, you can throw hammers at it, you can, you know, have IEDs, right? It doesn't matter, right? We can hit it and it's going to, you know, be okay. It's going to protect what's on the inside. But the way we see GM, Ford, Toyota, right? You name a truck vendor, the way they design trucks is kind of the exact opposite. This Ford tough logo that we always see, the idea is that these trucks are supposed to be so tough and durable, yet they're honestly the most malleable, soft, defensive vehicles we've ever seen. right? I mean, the fact I can go with a key up to a F-150 or a 1500 Ram, and I can just scratch it, and that's it. It's ruined. Or I can sit there and just, with my fist, give it a good punch, and, now I have a little dent in it. That kind of goes against the whole idea of we're tough. This is a truck. It's meant for hard work, and we're going to be going up and down these mountains in this tough terrain, and we're just going to throw these 2x4s in the back, and who cares what happens because it's a truck. Well, no, that's not the reality of it, right? I mean, the truck's going to have this abuse to it. And so that's pretty much what led to the idea of, designing the Cybertruck to have an exoskeleton. Right, so the idea is that the exterior would be tough and durable, right? We're talking about stainless steel, so we don't need paint, right? So we can actually shoot at it with a gun. We can take a hammer and just, pile that hammer against the side. And it's funny, I mentioned shoot at it with a gun because in this interview, Franz talks about how, how in movies you always see cops hiding behind a car when they're sitting there in a standoff, and they're using the car door as their shield, and they're aiming towards whoever the threat is. Well, he was talking about how they took some 9mm and they went with an internal combustion engine truck and they shot at it. And what he was saying was, don't. If you're ever in a gunfight or anything of that nature, do not stand behind the doors because, the bullets go right through, right? And it does, because it's not made to withstand that, right? It's soft metal, right? It's very penetrable. And apparently they also did the same thing with the Cybertruck, and, I'm assuming that's why we know that it's supposed to be bulletproof. But the idea here of going with an exoskeleton design, I think, is genius, right? And it gives it that tough, rugged look. It's definitely a very controversial design. And it's funny because, and I hope his name's Spike because I keep saying Spike, but the interviewer, Spike, he mentioned how when he first saw it, he was like, what am I looking at? That is interesting, but no, it's not for me. And I felt the same way. The first time I saw it, when I saw it unveiling, I was like, nope, no good, not for me. And what Spike was saying was then, he spoke to a few of his friends and said, hey, so what'd you think of that? And all his friends were saying, oh, we already got our reservations in. And, Spike, and they were asking Spike, they were saying, again, I really hope his name is Spike, but they're asking him, so you just don't get it, do you? And he's like, nope, I guess I don't. And then over time, he got it, and now he has a reservation for one. Same thing happened for me. Exact same thing. All right, I wanted a Model Y. I thought Model Y is what I want. It's what I'm gonna get. I would never get the Cybertruck. I thought it was hideous. And then time goes by. I'm looking at it some more. I watch some of the videos. I'm looking at more, and it was a weird thing. All of a sudden, it's like, oh my goodness, how did this vehicle that I thought was hideous, I'm now thinking might be the sexiest vehicle I have seen Tesla come out with. I don't know what happened in my mind. And it's not like I went from being a Tesla fan to, or not a Tesla fan to a Tesla fan. No, I was always a Tesla fan. So it's just something happened in my mind. It's almost like you ever hear a song and everybody loves it and you're like, no, not a good song. But then, you let a month go by and all of a sudden it's the only song you can play and bop to nonstop. Well, that's what happened with me with Cybertruck. So just a little funny story there. Okay, so I want to talk about two more things that they said on the video that I thought was very important. So during the quarterly earnings call, Elon talked about how there's no $25,000 car right now, which makes sense because they can't even make enough SX, Ys, and 3s in order to fill their needs. So why would they try to go for a lower model? Makes no sense. But what they did say is they are still working on other products, right? And they're still continuing to do engineering on it and tool them and all that. And what Franz said on this call, which I thought was very interesting, was that the Model S Plaid is a great learning vehicle, a great test bed for the Roadster. So I am very excited. I know the Roadster is long overdue. We've been very excited about it, but my goodness, when that thing comes out, that is going to be just a ridiculous car, especially with the SpaceX package, right? He made some, comments about it flying. So, I can't wait to see the re-unveiling of that vehicle, especially the SpaceX package. That's going to be, NHTSA's going to have, some time with that one. All right. Last thing I want to talk about was just this very interesting analogy. We all seem to make the same analogy when it comes to Tesla versus the OEMs in the automotive world, right? We talk about GM and Ford, how they tend to be like the Nokias and Blackberries and Motorola's, and Tesla's like Apple. Well, on this call, Spike and Franz had a different analogy that I thought was very similar, but just another way of thinking about it. And they were talking about how all these cable companies, all these legacy cable companies that we used to, have all these, direct access to, and we all had these boxes all throughout our house, and whether it's satellite or just, cable, but they used to dominate the television world, right? And now what we're seeing is that's no longer the case. Now it's Netflix, now it's Hulu, now it's Disney Plus, HBO Go, right? We've seen this transition, but what we've also seen is those legacy companies not really keep up, right? And the biggest difference that I've seen is that the legacy companies never really made their own content per se, right? They were more so hosting the content for you. They were more so a medium of delivery for you. But what we see now with Netflix, HBO, Hulu, right, Disney, especially Disney, right, we see all of these streaming providers start to develop their own content. So if I take that and I put it onto the automotive world, well, GM, Ford, and all of them, right, they've always just delivered vehicles that when you get them, after the day you get them, okay, they don't get any better. But here's Tesla, and you get the vehicle, and over time, because Tesla's developing the software, it gets better and better and better. Whether it's through getting things like the light show, whether it's getting more speed, more range, whether it's getting just new functionality, new user interface, whether it's full self-driving, autopilot, right? It just gets better and better. And so I think whenever people, again, try to analyze Tesla, this is something that we've all talked about it. They just don't seem to understand this portion of it, right? It's no different than saying if you looked at Amazon as a book company, you missed out on Amazon, right? If you looked at Apple and you looked at them as just a computer hardware company, you missed out on Apple, right? It's just the same story over and over. And with Tesla, if you look at them as a car company, you're going to miss out on Tesla if you haven't already. So just something else I want to point out. Keep in mind, I did leave this post or this interview down below in the description. So check it out. It's about an hour long. You can skip over the commercials that are in there, but it was a very good one. We don't see a lot from Franz, so I thought this one was very valuable. All right, well, we're going to leave it there for today. If you enjoyed this episode, do me a favor, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, ring that bell, and until tomorrow, peace.